everybody, welcome back to the channel. So it is Friday, and like every Friday at the end of each week, I bring to you one do-it-yourself survival project that you can keep in your kit or you can sell to supplement your income. So this week we're going to be making small game snares. These are the small game snares that I keep in my Bugout bag and that I sell on my eBay store and marketplace and stuff like that. These are pretty easy to make. The tools that you're going to need are just basic tools that most people have, except for maybe these cable cutters, but these are really cheap. You can get them at Harbor Freight for like under 10 bucks. So, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you first all the tools you're going to need, and then I'll go over and show you all the components you're going to need to make the snare. So the first thing you're going to need is some type of like a vise, and that is just so you can, or like a metal surface that you can hit the metal pieces to and crimp the stops to your cable. Second thing you're going to need is well, hammer. Third is going to be a tape measure. Then you're going to need some pliers, your cable cutters, and I think that's it for the tools. Then as far as the components go, well, you're going to need some 1/16 aluminum aircraft cable. You can pick this up at any hardware store, most hardware stores. You're also going to need these 1/16. These are called cable stops, but if you get them at a Trapper Supply store, they're called aluminum. What are they called? Aluminum swage stops. So they're just tiny little pieces of metal that go on the end of the cable. Then you're going to need some 1/16 aluminum. Aluminum swage sleeves. Otherwise, they're called double ferrules. And I think if you go to the hardware stores, these things are called, the cable stops are called single ferrules, I think. So they have different names depending on what you're using them for. The other piece of component you're going to need is one of these 3/32 micro locks. And then you're going to probably need one of these 9-gauge swivels. This is actually kind of optional. If you plan on catching bigger game like raccoons or something, or even coyotes, you're definitely going to need a swivel. So, but for today, I'm just going to be making basic loops because you know, these small game snares are going to be primarily for like rabbits and squirrels and stuff like that. I don't know if I showed this already, but then you're going to need some 1/4-inch plastic tubing. So that pretty much is all you're going to need. So I'm going to go ahead and get the camera pointed down closer, and I'm going to show you exactly how I make a small game snare. So stay tuned. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and measure out 48 inches. Your snares don't have to be 48 inches. You can make, you can make them 24 inches if you want. 24 inches is sufficient too. Or whatever. The length isn't really all that critical, just as long as it's more than 24 inches. But for today, I'm just going to be making some 48-inch snares. So once you can measure out your 48 inches, and I've already have this measured out. I got marks on this bench for my snares. So that's kind of how I can just make these pretty quick. So I'll just go ahead and I'm going to bring my cable out here and measure it out. Just kind of roughly measure it. I have my cable on a spool over in the back there, but go ahead and cut that. These cable cutters it's kind of the most critical piece of equipment you can have, because you want to make sure that whatever you're cutting your cable with, that you get nice clean cuts, because if they're frayed at the end, you're going to have a difficult time getting them through these little tiny holes there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this stop on. Probably should have brought my glasses, that would have helped. But anyways, I don't know if you can see that. It's on there. And I'm just going to have it kind of kinked out, or kind of the cable coming out just like maybe 3/16 of an inch at the end there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that there's the cable. I'll show you this a little bit better, but cable has kind of a natural curvature because it's spun. And so you just kind of hold a cable limp in your hand. You can see what direction the cable is going to want to curve. And that is like the most critical part in making snares. So I like to make sure that when I go to flatten this stop, that it's flat with the curvature of my cable. So my cable's going this way. I want to put my stop right there and flatten it so that the flat part is, I didn't do that perfect, but close. But anyway, so that's what it looks like, flattened and crimped on the end of the cable. You can use cable crimpers, but it's a little bit more, they're a little more pricey, and it's just not necessary. So I can achieve the same thing I can do with the hammer. So the next thing, like I said, you're going to want to make sure, see how the cable is curving naturally like that? Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to feed that. I want to go right to the end, and I'm going to take my pliers, and this is the most critical part of this whole step here. So I'm going to basically bend this back in the exact opposite direction of the curvature of my cable. So it's just like that. And then I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to crimp it just like that. Bend it down. See that? So I have a nice bend right in the end there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, now that you have this all crimped, I'm going to just go ahead, figure out the curvature of my snare here, and I'm just going to give it a little a pull around this bar here. Is the handle of my vise, and what this is called is just called charging the cable. It's not 100% necessary, but it does make for a better snare, and I'll show you why a little bit later. But just going to go ahead and find the natural curve of this snare and just give it a little like that. And that just puts, see that? It just gave it a lot more of a circle in the curvature of this snare. So now I'm going to take my micro lock here. And if you'll notice with these micro locks, you have basically it's just a bent piece of metal, like kind of like a mouth. And on one end you have a little hole on the top, and the other end you have kind of like a rectangular hole. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our snare wire, we're going to come to the unfinished end, and we're going to put it through the long hole, the back side of the mouth here of the long hole, just like that. Feed that through, and then we're going to come back with our cable, and we're going to go through the little hole, but through the mouth side. See that? So now it's coming through the small hole, but on the opening of the mouth side. So like it should look like that. You can see that. All right, now I show you one of the reasons why I put that charge in my snares is it just helps the snare fall. So when you go to set your snare up and the animal puts its head through there, it hardly has to do anything. It just helps the slide kind of, it gives it more slide to kind of fall. So that's the point of that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our 1/4 inch tubing here and get yourself a little knife, and we're just going to cut off like a 3/4 inch piece. just like that. And what this does is that it gives you a place to position your snare, so you can stick a little nail through there or a branch. And this is really just a I forget what they would call this in snares, but it's a holder for your snares. And when I go to set up the snare, I'll show you what the purpose of this is. But that's the next thing that goes on here. So we're just going to feed that through like that. Okay. So that's where we're at. We got our stop, we got our lock, the crimp, the charge cable, and our 1/4 inch plastic tubing. All right, so now we're almost to the finish line here. So like I said, at this point, what you could do is you could put your swivel on, which basically you would just feed your the cable through your swivel like this. And you would just finish it by putting a stop at the end here, and then that would just keep that locked on there, the cable stop. But for today, we're just going to be making some simple rabbit squirrel snares. So we are going to be using this double ferrule, and that's going to come through this hole. These are a little trickier because the holes tend to be a little smaller. All right, so I'm through one end. Now I'm going to bend it like that. And come through that end. Like that. Okay. So there it is. You just got yourself a nice loop at the end. Now we're going to bring it over to the vise here. I'll move the camera a little bit. And take the hammer. Just flatten that on there. And there, now you have yourself a finished snare. And this end, you basically take like a 16-penny nail, and you can just, nail this into a tree and then bend it over, and that just keeps the, obviously the snare in place. It keeps the, the animal from going anywhere. And, yeah, otherwise you'd have your swivel, and then that way, when the animal's twisting, it's not gonna, it's not gonna end up, twisting the cable to the point where it snaps. So, all right, so I think that's pretty much it. And then what I do is the way I store these is I'll just kind of wrap them in their natural curvature in my hand like that. So they're just like that. And then I'll put them in my can just like that. And usually I'll put, you can put like 5 in here, but usually I'll just sell them in like 3 packs, for fairly cheap, like under $10. But all right, everyone, thanks for joining me today. Hopefully you got something out of today's video. If you have any questions as to how to make these, you can go ahead and leave me those questions in the comment section. I'll try to get to answer all those questions. But like I said, keeping snares in your bug out bag and your survival kit, probably the most essential thing that you can have. With snares, it's like a numbers game. So the more snares you put out in the field, the better your odds for procuring food and ultimately staying alive. So definitely would encourage all of you to go ahead and make some snares and put them in your survival kits, put them in your bug out bags. And if you don't want to, you can always just purchase the snares. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description as to where you can purchase the snares I made today. And I'll also make sure to leave links in the description as to where you can get the components to make the snares. So, all right, you guys, it's getting freezing out here. I got to get back to the house. So until the next one, stay prepared. Make one do-it-yourself survival kit piece. So we're going to be making small game snares. And like all the other Happy Friday. So, like I said, each week,